What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by William Control. Basically, this album is called Noir, and it came out in the late spring of 2010. So basically, in late 2022, I reviewed William Control's debut album, Hate Culture, which I didn't like as much, but I think I have more appreciation for it now. It definitely had some gems on there, one of which was the lead single, Beautiful Loser, which I liked. But I kind of remember complaining about it that it just had like a lot. I really felt like the energy of Beautiful Loser was just not matched in very many songs. But I pretty much, I think at some stage I might do a YouTube short of like a Redux review of that particular album just because I think I would raise the score. I gave it like a 1.5, 2.5 out of 10, not higher than a 3.5 out of 10. So I kind of feel like I want to go back and kind of get to that one. But this album is definitely an improvement, at least from what I thought last year of that particular one. I mean, it's not a classic album, but it does have some gems on here. One of the bigger complaints I had about Hate Culture, though, is just the fact that it only had one single. And I know that, like, Death Club was a single that was supposed to be on that album, but just never surfaced anywhere. You can find the remix on, like, the Underworld soundtrack, but I just would have to say that that song was kind of floating around. But yeah, there was only one single which bothered me about Hate Culture just because Beautiful Loser was such a hit song. And they kind of did that with this album too. I kind of feel like it's a good album, definitely has some gems on there, but they just kind of slagged their promotion. It's kind of curious as to why that kind of happened. But the first single is I'm Only Human Sometimes, which is a pretty stellar one. I would definitely have to say it's definitely, if you like the vibes, I would say if you like Hate Culture, there is some similarities to that album on here. It's not an overabundance. This is kind of a brief album. There's only 12 songs, and 3 of which are kind of less than 1 minute songs on here, I would say. If I look at the concept about it, there are some sequels to some of the stuff that you'll find on Hate Culture, like Beautiful Loser and The Damned and songs like that that are off that particular album. There's songs like My Lady Dominate, Dorian Gray, Ultrasound, some of those type ones. I'm Only Human Sometimes that really kind of have that feel. It's kind of a mixture. There is some different stuff on here. There is a cover song, which is kind of odd. There's a cover song of an Elvis Presley song on here. So there are some differential vibes. It's not strictly dark wave and synth pop, I would have to say. It's kind of interesting. I'm glad that William Control tried some new things. It's just the disappointment factor about it is just the fact that not all of these kind of work, but there is just a dark swirl of an album. Like the main theme of this particular album is it's just kind of haunting. This really feels like a pretty sheer and shrill kind of project. Just and the fact that this album came out in the summertime really showcases the fact that it just had some good edges towards it. But it's just meant for like, I mean, a good chunk of this album is meant for like nightclubs and raves and that type of stuff. Definitely more fierce nightclubs as far as that kind of goes. But there is some dance music on here, but it's just kind of the concept that it's brief. There's only really 9 songs on here. So I would have to say to look at that concept that you're just getting like an amalgamation kind of stuff on here just within those 9 songs. So it's good enough to be able to say it's worth purchasing. I do think, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of curious as to what I would think nowadays of Hate Culture. I would really have to look after the album because I did purchase that album, but I listened to like certain songs like Beautiful Loser, The Dam, some of those type songs. This is me trying to think of a few, but I really think what tarnished that project somewhat is just the fact that it didn't have another single. And I at least like this album more. I feel like this one just impacted me. This was not one that has as much of a late bloom kind of feeling about it, I would have to say, but I look after it, it's just shorter. And that's kind of thing. There just were easier, more songs on Hate Culture, and that's kind of thing. There were more songs on there, but I felt like it was just more sporadic and just was kind of more of a slow burn project, where this one is more immediate hitting, but it just has less offerings to kind of have this time. But we'll go ahead and talk about the single. So I'm Only Human Sometimes is the lead single, the first single on here, and the only single on here. This is a snappy kind of electro jock music, I would say. It's rather fit for the dance floor, and it's a pretty hit, pleasant single, I would say. If you like the song Beautiful Loser off of Hate Culture, this is a pretty good sequel to that. It's in that same sort of pitch and same sort of vein as that particular project. It's the same kind of variation of how that kind of went. So it's basically just like album two's version of like Beautiful Loser as far as that's kind of concerned. Same kind of, not to say that it's samey just in terms of being plain and kind of unoriginal, but it's just kind of the concept that it's just another hit song from William Control to kind of stack them up a little bit more. I do count Death Club as a single. I do feel it's really too bad that Death Club wasn't on Hate Culture. I think that would have been a great backup single to have had on that project, but this is like another hit one for it. Really broadcast the album pretty well. Has enough hits on here, so if you are looking for more songs like I'm Only Human Sometimes, there are some other ones on here, but this is just very compacted as like a single. It's really meant for radio and that type of stuff. I mean, William Control is pretty low key. They were definitely pretty EDM. I mean, this is definitely more of like a dance chart kind of, I mean, I don't see this being at like the top of the Billboard charts and that type of stuff, but it is good for like the dance charts and EDM and rave type stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just an easy kind of highlight for that sort of feel, though. I would definitely say this really has some good jive about it. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. So to talk about the songs I recommend on here, out of 12 songs, which if you slash the 3 songs that have less than a minute in length on here, which are just interludes and stuff like that, I would say I like at least 5 songs out of 9 on here. Plus, there's one song out of the 3 interludes that I like, which is Un Nonce, which is in French. There's some French language in here, and it's kind of the concept that Una Nonce. I like this one. I'll talk about Una Nonce real quick. It's a chilling interlude, and it's very icy and affable. It's just really kind of cold and dark kind of lyrics, I would say. It's just a very icy song that I like. This real kind of chilling. It's the sort of stuff that I'd expect from like Twisted and Korn and some folks like that. Mushroom Head, maybe some of them. This really has that kind of real dark and shrill kind of thing. Even Marilyn Manson probably would do this sort of thing. It's just a good one. It's an almost song that, I mean, it does kind of have like a looming kind of beat. It's very quiet and just kind of looming, I would say, but I do like the concept. I almost would have wanted this to have been on like a more kind of dance oriented production. It would have worked extremely well, but it is good. I do recommend it. So yeah, I basically recommend 6 songs out of 12 if you count the interlude, and 5 songs out of 9 if you're just counting the songs. So to talk about these songs I recommend, they would be I'm Only Human Sometimes, Dorian Gray, My Lady Dominate, Ultrasound, and Noir, the title track. So basically one of the best songs on the album is Noir, the title track. This is just an excellent kind of haunting piano. Noir, the title track, is just an excellent kind of haunting piano drear of a song. I would definitely say it's an album highlight, and it nails its soul and pace with finesse. I would definitely say it's just a very nice song. This just has like a very chilling, the sort of stuff that like Marilyn Manson and 36 Mafia would do, and Evanescence, some of those type folks. It's really kind of one of the darker songs. This is not really a dance song. This is just kind of like, I mean, it could almost be makeshift, but it's just very chilling to something you'd hear in the autumn, that type of sound. It's really kind of like Edgar Allan Poe, like this kind of dark and morose as far as that kind of goes, but it just nails it in terms of like the song format. This is definitely the sort of variable that I like, that William Control expanded his repertoire and was able to do stuff like this on here. I would definitely take in another song like this. This album is just way too brief, and I definitely think there need to be a second single. There need to be more songs like this, but this is a new trick that he learned. That he pulled off extremely well, and it just works. I like the concept behind that. It's an excellent kind of haunting one. But yeah, to talk about some of these kind of dance club songs that are like Beautiful Loser and I'm Only Human Sometimes, like Ultrasound is a really sharp dance club paced boiler. I would say it's built for raves. I would definitely have to say it's a late night flash. It's late night flash for a regular quick night out. I would definitely say, so if you're living quick, living fast, that type of stuff, this is definitely a good song for that. Just really has like a snappy, kind of sharp and just riveting kind of pace on here. This is probably one of the most tumultuous and crazy songs on the album. I mean, the lyrics are a little bit hard to hear on this song. It really just kind of lets the beat do most of the talking on here, but I would have to say it's just a sharp dance cut if you're just really trying to dance and jive and that type of stuff. Just a good one for that, but it's just a little bit tougher to kind of hear the lyrics on here, but it is a pretty sharp one just to kind of have in like a riveting sense. Dorian Gray is a pretty shrill one. This is definitely a doomed sounding electronic thriller. I would say it's an easy dance club gem. I would say. This got a dark, catchy kind of production on here. This is definitely a really militant kind of one that just really sounds like some of the stuff from Hate Culture, just in a more militia kind of sense. The thing about this song is Wikipedia says that it has Ash Costello from New Year's Day on here and Jeffree Star, which I can tell that Ash Costello was kind of on the chorus and stuff. I didn't really notice Jeffree Star on this song that much. He was a little bit tougher to find, which is really too bad. I think he would have worked extremely well with these sorts of vocals on this particular song. I really wish that Jeffree Star would have been easier to hear on this song, so I definitely would have liked that. But Ash Costello does a pretty good job on here. This is just a very kind of dark and doomed sounding song, so I definitely like this one. It's just very much vintage Hate Culture as far as that kind of goes. Lady Dominate is a haunting, gloomy electronic dance gem. It's got a sluggish mid-tempo slow dance kind of feel about it. It's a sluggish mid-tempo slow dance cut, I would say, and it's very dope. I just look at the concept behind that one. It's kind of a concept where it's similar to some of the stuff. I look at the concept of it, similar to some of the stuff off of Hate Culture. It's a little bit more relaxed. I do like the more gloomy and kind of like somber kind of production this time around, where Hate Culture had a lot of jivey kind of snappy ones. Hate Culture had a lot more jivey kind of snappy ones, just with like a more electronic kind of sense, just with that kind of doomed sounding. But this one's a little bit more malaise about it. This is more typical of like Marilyn Manson and Korn and some of those type folks, I definitely feel like, but just kind of a sluggish one. This is definitely like a real kind of malaise, kind of mid-tempo song. This really feels like a slow dance cut more, not so much like a snappy kind of dance, but just more of like a malaise, just kind of relax a bit, just kind of, yeah, this real malaise kind of slow dance cut. I just like the concept of how that one kind of works. It's just interesting kind of get it. The last one just felt so imperative sounding. Hate Culture just felt really so imperative sounding just by the theme of the album. But this album doesn't have as much of a theme this time. It's just interesting kind of get some of those typical William Control type electronic dark synth songs that work so extremely well. So that's kind of the thing about it. But to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy, like, once again, I have to say that my main complaint about this album is just the fact that there's just not enough promotion or songs. There's just not enough of what you get, where they do have a nice niche, and I feel like the songs that are good by William Control are really excellent. They just have that engrossing kind of appeal about them that just works extremely well. But it's just so minimalist, I would feel like, in terms of like the quantity that's kind of on here. I kind of look after some of the songs like I didn't like. Like, I didn't really like the production of Vorspiel. I kind of, that one just didn't quite connect as well, which is surprising because usually William Control has such crafty and excellent kind of electronic songs. That one was just one that was, I mean, just it being a little bit over a minute was surprising that that one just didn't hit heavier, but this was kind of like not quite as compelling as normal. All Due Restraint was kind of like a starry-eyed, kind of dark and kind of looming, kind of outdoor looming kind of feel about it. That one just was not quite as catchy as some of these other ones. I mean, that one was taken off the dance floor. So this is just kind of one that's a little bit more kind of in motion and a little bit more has ambition towards it a little bit, but it just didn't quite connect as well. I mean, some of these new angles that William Control tries on here as they tried to expand their songwriting, just, I mean, some of them work, but some of them are just kind of meh in terms of that. That's why I kind of feel like this is above average, but it's just kind of somewhat middle of the road, just in terms of like, I mean, at least they have like these electronic and dark synth songs down extremely well, but some of these new moments, apart from like Noir and maybe in some cases Soliloquy, I mean, that one was decent. Like, to talk about that one, Soliloquy was kind of like an acoustic, kind of a dark acoustic song that like Marilyn Manson would have done off of Hollywood or something like that. But it just kind of, it was kind of a sweet bitter where it's kind of dark sounding, but it just has more up tempo, kind of upbeat kind of lyrics about it. Just trying to be a little bit more of like promising and, you know, happier sounding, and just I feel like the production just didn't suit it as far as that kind of went. I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more malaise about it. I just think if like the notches of the acousticness had been turned down a couple pegs, that could have really been like a solid second single for like some sort of power ballad or just some sort of makeshift kind of song. But it just, the arrangements behind it just were not quite connecting enough. And then Why Dance with the Devil When You Have Me was just kind of, that one was kind of like a hangout song, but it just really kind of felt like it just didn't quite connect as well. It had Corrupt on here, and I didn't notice Lisa Graves, which is kind of a band on here, but like Corrupt kind of fit the song, but it just, I feel like the arrangements for how this song kind of went was just a little bit awkward. I just didn't really like the composition, how this song kind of went and such. It just didn't really have like the affability compared to some of these. I think Corrupt would have done a lot better on a song like I'm Only Human Sometimes, or like Dorian Gray or Ultrasound or something like that. It would have been odd hearing Corrupt on like a dark synth kind of song. That this one was just kind of a hangout song that just didn't quite have like the appetite for what I was looking for it. And then I didn't like the Can't Help Falling in Love. I know that's an Elvis Presley cover song, but it just really didn't match with the rest of the album. It's just kind of one that was kind of another one that was more peppy, like Soliloquy, that just didn't quite work out as extremely as well. I just feel like if he had made that song kind of like how Marilyn Manson does his cover songs and put like a new spin on it rather than just sing the Elvis lyrics and just kind of have it just be like an acoustic kind of one. It's just acoustic makeshift that just didn't quite have the catch. It definitely needed some dark synth pizzazz. I know he could have done that a lot better. Something like Orgy or Marilyn Manson, those type folks do. They could have definitely turned that song into a little bit better. It was just really like a vanilla cover song that just didn't work. And yeah, it's just basically the concept about some of these. There just were some new moments. The covers, I was kind of disappointed in the cover song, and some of these just had poor productions and just not quite affable in terms of like the angles for how some of them tried. And like Soliloquy was just kind of like, I would have liked an acoustic kind of like malaise song, but just really the peppiness of it kind of detracted from it. So it's this kind of thing. But to look after it, me liking at least 5 songs out of 9 on here. And I didn't like the, yeah, I talked about not liking Vorspiel and Epilogue, so those are just kind of ones that just were just interludes and such. But I did like Una Nonce to talk, like I talked about that. So to talk about like me liking 6 songs out of 12 on here, plus 5 out of 9 songs in terms of like this actual songs. I would say I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 6.25 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty good. I feel like a 6.25 is good enough, but just some of the derailments, like just some of the kind of awkward things that just don't quite connect as well when I know they had the strengths to do it. It just kind of had like a mismatch of like the execution, how it went, and then just the fact that the minimal, I feel like just the awkward execution and then the minimalist kind of promotion just kind of derailed this project a bit. I definitely think there could have been another single on here. I probably would have went with like Ultrasound or Dorian Gray or even Noir. The title track would have been a good one to have kind of done. My Lady Dominate. There were some ones on here. I do feel like these songs do have like the same execution as Hate Culture. So if you like that album, there are further gems to kind of back it up. This album's just too short. This album is just too short, and it just doesn't have enough promotion to really back it in that concept. Just needed more hits. I know they have the songs to do it. I know I can just sense that William Control has the ability to do songs like I'm Only Human Sometimes and Beautiful Loser again, but it just was kind of kept at like a restrained and kind of refrain altitude that really detracts from it. This would have been a good moment to have had them really blossom and get towards some more things, but it just didn't do that. But the social score, I'll go ahead and give a 7 out of 10 because I do like the good songs on here. Most of this album's pretty social for the most part. There are some ones that are just kind of like wild. There are some ones that are just kind of wild cards on here in terms of like this, like the sheer kind of what you get compared to like the normal dark synth and more electronic rave dance club type stuff. I look after it. Some of those moments don't work, but there is some social moments on here out of 9 songs that you will find like some good gems to kind of have. So it's just a decent weekend album. This kind of makeshift malaise in some of that sense, at least in terms of like the work by day, rave by night kind of atmosphere. Just supposing that you have a day life, but you also have a night life. There are some songs like Can't Help Falling in Love and Soliloquy for like makeshift day kind of tones, but they just don't hit as heavily. But I do feel like their nightlife is just extremely potent. So I just would have to say that. But in terms of the future, like William Control has kind of had like some controversies around them, but I do like this band. I would have to say they're pretty executed pretty well. They do have some good, great songs and that type of stuff. It's been a while. I think they dropped an album like in 2021, but it's been a while. I don't know what they've been up to recently, but hopefully they get some more music kind of going. But I am going to review more of William Control. But yeah, I do like Hate Culture more than I used to. So if you do see that review and you notice I didn't like it, I do like it more now. I would have to say I just don't know what I think of it nowadays. It's been a good while since I've listened to it. And this is, pretty decently above average, but it does have its miss perks about what's wrong with it. But there's some great stuff on here.